It was supposed to be an ordinary evening, just dinner with my wife and her family. We had been married for 2 years, and while our relationship wasn't perfect, I believed we were strong enough to work through our differences. Little did I know, that night would change everything. The restaurant was fancy, almost too fancy for my taste. As I glanced around at the glittering chandeliers and neatly dressed waitstaff, I couldn't help but think about the bill we'd rack up. My wife, Sarah, had invited her parents, her sister, and her sister's fiancé, making it a table of 6. When the menu arrived, the prices leapt off the page. I thought to myself, why does it always have to be the most expensive place in town? But I said nothing. I didn't want to ruin the mood. Instead, I focused on the conversation, smiling politely as Sarah's father retold stories I'd heard countless times. When the food arrived, I noticed Sarah giving me pointed looks throughout the meal. Something was clearly on her mind, but I chose to ignore it, hoping she'd bring it up later in private. The night seemed to be winding down uneventfully, until the waiter placed the check on the table. "Can you give me your credit card?" she asked casually, though her tone carried a weight that made me uneasy. I looked at her, confused. "For what?" "To pay for dinner," she said matter-of-factly, as if it were obvious. I froze. "Wait, you want me to pay for everyone's dinner?" I asked, incredulous. "Yes," she replied, her tone sharpening. "It's just dinner with my family. You're my husband. This shouldn't even be a discussion." "Sarah, no," I said firmly, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is way too expensive, and I never agreed to this." Her eyes narrowed, her cheeks flushing with anger. "So, you're just going to embarrass me in front of my family?" she hissed. "I'm not embarrassing you," I shot back, keeping my voice low. "You're the one putting me in this position." Before I could say another word, she grabbed her wine glass and, in one swift motion, hurled its contents in my face. The cold liquid hit me like a slap, and the entire restaurant seemed to fall silent. I sat there, stunned, as red wine dripped from my hair and soaked my shirt. Something snapped inside me. Without thinking, I stood up and slapped her across the face. The sound echoed in the room. She gasped, clutching her cheek as tears welled in her eyes. What happened next was a blur. Sarah began crying and screaming, drawing even more attention from the other diners. Her father shot up from his seat, storming toward me. "How dare you touch my daughter?" he roared, his voice booming with fury. Not wanting to escalate things further, I turned and walked out of the restaurant, my heart pounding. I could still hear Sarah's sobs and her father's shouting as I left. When I got home, I sat in silence, replaying the night's events over and over. Shame gnawed at me for losing control, but I couldn't ignore the humiliation and disrespect I felt. I waited for Sarah to come home, but she never did. The next day, I called her, no answer. I sent her a message apologizing for what happened, but also explaining how disrespected I felt. Still nothing. By the 3rd day, it became clear she wasn't coming back. Strangely, I felt a sense of relief. I told myself, this isn't how a marriage should be. Yes, I had made a mistake, but so had she. She humiliated me in public and expected me to simply accept it. That wasn't love. That wasn't respect. I made a decision. I contacted a lawyer and began the process of filing for divorce. I gave her what the law required, no more, no less. I didn't want a long, drawn-out battle. I just wanted to move on. Once the paperwork was finalized, I packed up her belongings, left them with a mutual friend, and blocked her number. I didn't want to see her, hear from her, or relive the nightmare of that night ever again. Now, as I sit here reflecting on everything, I've come to realize that some things simply aren't meant to be. Yes, I made mistakes, but so did she. That night, we brought out the worst in each other. Maybe it's better this way. 2 people walking away from a toxic situation before it destroyed us both. And so, I closed that chapter of my life and moved forward, determined never to let anger or pride dictate my actions again. It was a painful lesson, but one I'll carry with me forever.